Golf is the only thing in golf that doesn't change. The only thing that changes the person playing.
Is this man a one-time winner on the PGA Tour?
The point, Alan, is he didn't go Hollywood.
You need a fourth? So I think we can all agree that Echo golf shoes changed the game when Fred Couples rolled up wearing them without socks. It spoke to their comfort and just sort of that effortless cool. But you have an Arnold Palmer story I want to hear, right? Let's hear it, Mike.
Have I ever told you about my last visit with Arnold? I saw Arnold. I would like to think no reporter saw Arnold more than I did when he was in his 80s. My last visit with him was in Latrobe, and I drove there wearing these pathetic Birkenstocks. When I got, I'll just wear my shoes when I get there. But when I got there, all I had was my Echo golf shoes, and Arnold's really formal. And I'm going into his office with my cleaned up Echo golf shoes, and Arnold's like checking me out, and he's nodding. And I said, "Arnold, are you looking at my socks?" And Arnold's like, "No, I'm looking at your shoes." And then Arnold talked about all the different shoes he wore, and no question, Arnold dug the Echo shoe. I love the Echo shoe. I know you do too. It's a great shoe, and I'm sales resistant.
If it's good enough for Arnold Palmer and Fred Couples, it's good enough for the rest of you. So go to echo.com and you can find one that fits, that you like, that people will stare at, like Arnie. So back to Need a Fourth. Hello, this is Alan Shipnuck, back for another Need a Fourth podcast. As always, joined by Michael Bamberger in Philadelphia. This time, Jeff Ogilvy is in the Fire Pit offices in Oceanside, California. Boys, it's nice to get the gang back together here. It's been a little while.
Oh, it was a good time.
Yeah, it's good to be here.
I love it. So we have a really fun guest tonight. I can tell you that she is from the great state of California. At this exact moment, she's about 3 miles away from me, but that's unusual circumstances. She's here in Pebble Beach playing a tournament. She's 3-0 all time in Solheim Cup singles. She shot 61 in her first ever LPGA event way back when, like turn of the century.
Alan, did you write a book with her at one point in your life?
Okay, you got it. The one and only Christina Kim is our guest on Need a Fourth. Christina, show yourself.
Hey, there she is.
That was dramatic. I love that.
I had a piece of paper covering the camera.
Yes, yeah. For those who are not watching, Christina
that was the best reveal we've had so far.
not even close. I mean, easily the best. So Christina, yes, we do have a long history, which Michael alluded to, and you podcasted here on the Fire Pit Network in the past. But tell our listeners and our co-hosts, like, you've been out here for a heck of a long time. Like, where are you in your career? How hot is the fire burning? Like, let's get caught up a little bit.
Well, I have, as of the end of this season, concluded my 20th year on the LPGA Tour.
Amazing.
And I had the yips this year, and I figured this out early November. Like, you always hear, oh, so-and-so had the yips and this, that, and it's like, you can see it, this, whatever. So you have this like vision in your brain as to what the yips are. And it is nothing, it's nothing like what your brain can conjure up, because honest to God, I've probably hit the ball better than I have in about a decade. And I wouldn't have been able to stroke a dead horse if I was sitting on top of it.
How bad did it get?
My birdies, I would make the random 20-footer, but if I was inside of 18 feet, I couldn't hit my line. I couldn't get the speed right. I was, like flinching outside of like my entire aura. And it was, it was crazy. And it wasn't every single putt, but it was just enough to sit there and just cause you to just have no fucking clue what was going on.
So Jeff, at this point, you and I can just leave the room. The floor is Michael's because he's intimately familiar with this subject. I'm sure he wants to go into it in gory detail. Michael, the floor is yours.
Do you hold on really hard with the left hand, take it outside, and try to shove it in there without any release whatsoever?
No, my stroke does not look bad, but I just feel my soul flinching like 2 degrees with almost every stroke. And then I would be off balance. Like there was no real discernible shove. If anything, like my putter was always exiting too far left. And so it would be like a flip of the hands as opposed to a lack of a release. It was insanity. It was insanity.
What's your level, Christina, your level of comfort of actually using the word yip? Because like I was shocked years ago when I heard Tom Watson say, once a yipper, always a yipper, like he was in recovery. Here's Tom Watson, one of the great golfers of all time, one of the great putters of all time, admitting that he was in recovery from being a yipper and that you were never in full recovery. It was like being a recovering alcoholic. But are you comfortable with using that word yip?
I'm very comfortable. One, I can relate to that on a mental health level. I always talk about how, years ago, I almost committed suicide. And so my mental health is something that I have to be aware of all the time. And, on bad days, it's like, oh, hello, old friend. You can fuck right off, but you're going to hang for a little while. That's cool. And I mean, for a period of time, because I've always been, in the last like 18 years of my career, been known to be one of the fastest golfers on the LPGA tour. I was pulling like whatever you would call it, like a Sergio or Kevin Na with the grip thingy for like 8 months, to the point where I was like openly weeping as I was playing golf because he just had this thing in my brain that just would not go. And so I was on the putting green at my golf course in Orlando over at Orange Tree Golf Club. And I was I'm grinding and I'm sitting here trying to figure out what on earth is happening. And it just dawned on me. I was like, then I said it to myself. I said, you had the yips. And so for me, it's similar to, like what they say in terms of like addictions. It's like, recognizing that there's a problem. And I was just like, that putt was a yip. I had the yip. So just being able to face the fact of what was going on provided me so much freedom and so much of an ability to just be like, oh, okay, this is what you're doing. And I mean, I was getting putting lessons, and it was all the same thing of like, you're peeking, your putter is exiting left, you're flipping your hands, you're like the kind of shit that I tell my pro-am partners every Wednesday prior to a tournament round. I was cumulatively doing that myself as a touring professional. And so when I realized I had the yips, I was like, son of a bitch. Okay, so now I know what I've been doing. So now I know what to do to make sure that stays a part of my past.
I mean, you make it sound like a physical issue, Christina, but the yips is metaphysical. I mean, it's in your soul. It's I mean, like Michael, so you may not know this about Michael, who I play a lot of golf with. He's right-handed, has a very nice right-handed golf swing and a very nice right-handed putting stroke, but he carries the kind of putter that he can, if he feels it coming on, he can just go lefty. And so when I've played a lot with Michael, but not everyone has. So we'll be out on a golf course and all of a sudden they're like, wait, has he been putting left-handed this whole time? Like, no, just on that 3-footer. And so it's, like Michael, what does it feel like for you when you're struggling? Like, can you put a name on it?
I feel like I know I've got no chance of making it righty, and that lefty, like I'll read it bad, but I won't stroke it bad. So the miss feels less bad.
It's a white-knuckled terror.
This is really not fair to Jeff to be having this conversation in front of
him. Hey, man, you got to face this shit, because then now you know how to combat it. Are you kidding me?
Jeff, your putting stroke has always been smooth and simple, and you've never struggled with any of this, I imagine.
I've yipped a few putts, I think, but it's never caught on for very long. I think it starts out technical. I think it ends up mental, but surely it starts out technical. I mean, putting's so simple. Like, it doesn't take much to get your ball position out by an inch or something, and all of a sudden it's just not taken off where you're looking, and you miss a couple that you thought you were going to make, and then before you know it, you're telling yourself you're a shit putter under your breath. Like, I don't know. Chipping, I think I've seen. How was your chipping, Christina? Fine?
I was yipping. It wasn't. Again, it was just bad enough for it to not be like, I feel like I could make every chip, but it was the same kind of thing where it's like I felt like I was yipping chips.
Yeah, I've seen some guys have a lot of trouble chipping. Chipping's actually more damaging, I think, sometimes. I mean, you can get away with it because you can just putt, right? But if you get on short grass and you have to chip and you've got the yips, nah.
It was astounding to see Tiger with the chip yips, and I don't care what anybody says. He we had him. I mean, he was flinching and he looked awful. And as Jeff just said, it was on the tight lies. Fluffy lies, he was fine, but on tight lies, you couldn't make it. Have you two ever played in a tournament together?
I've seen him.
We played in the same tournament at the Victorian Open.
The Victoria Open.
It's the men's and women's run in conjunction at the same time. It's a good event. It's a great event. Yeah.
Alternating tee times, male, female, male, female. That was the first time I ever actually laid eyes on him. It was pretty special. And I top 10 that year.
Why don't they do that as a mixed team event? Wouldn't that be so fun to actually have the men and the women playing alongside each other, not sort of concurrently?
I think it's coming. I mean, Australia's got 3 or 4 sort of men and women playing the same events sort of thing. I mean, it's coming. There's certainly a desire for it, I think. Maybe my peers and Christina's peers need to open their minds up a little bit to it, and maybe the powers that be. I don't know. I think there's enough issues in golf at the moment to not start chasing stuff like that, but I think it would be a great tournament. The JCPenney, wasn't it? I remember the JCPenney when I first got on tour. That was a thing, right?
Yes.
And that was what a tour player, an LPGA player, and a seniors tour, champions tour, maybe?
No, just the two.
Just the two?
Yeah.
I don't know why. That would have been a great event, I imagine. Was it great?
Oh, it was fun. Greatest pairing of all time. John Daly with Christina. Can you get pardon me, Christina? Because when you first came up to me, you were Chrissy, and I know Christina's really the way to go now. Christina, can you remember who John Daly played with?
Laura Davies. I wasn't on tour yet when the JCPenney was still taking place. I would guess Laura Davies.
It was Laura Davies. Yeah, those two together were fantastic.
That's an awesome pairing. Wait, so just before we leave the topic of the Yips, because it is so fascinating to me.
By the way, real quick, we're putting explicit on this podcast episode, right?
Obviously. We're not going to scare the children. Jeff, I'm curious, what's the worst case you've ever seen on the PGA Tour of a guy who had the Yips on the greens?
Ernie?
On the greens, yeah. Ernie. Well, I think the worst single putt I've ever seen, I didn't see it live, was Lucas's putt for 60 at Greensboro. It's on YouTube. Lucas Glover. That he was going through a rough time. Lucas had it tough for a while, but fought through it and got through it. Ernie's got pretty bad. That year at Augusta was pretty comedy show, wasn't it? He just couldn't get the ball in the hole. I mean, that's a scary green, even putting well. And you can see it's. I've had 4 putts there putting well, like hitting 3 good putts and they all missed. So it can happen. But yeah, Lucas's putt at Greensboro, I think he would admit it too. He nearly missed the blade, like on a 2-footer. It was tough, but he found it back. I mean, he's still out there playing well.
I think about Ernie. Like you go into Augusta so full of hope, and you spend all week long practicing and making the scene. In the first hole of the first round, you go out in 6 putt, and it's like you have 35 more holes to play. It must have just been an absolute death march, like for both of you guys. When you get off to a bad start, and like how do you soldier through that?
Well, so in 2020, get to the CME final round. I end up having to incur a 2-stroke penalty because I got to the tee box. It was a cart ride. There were no carts around. We were the first group out, whatever. At the end of the day, I should have gotten there sooner. But regardless, get to the tee. I jump out of the tee. I flying squirrel it onto the tee box. I'm like, did I make it in time? And the rules official, Mitch Moon, was like, I'm really sorry you didn't. And I was like, can I still play? And he said, yeah, go for it. So I think I made triple, and then I had 7 birdies after that. Like, shit happens. Like, what are you going to do? Like, it's like the future is never written. We have, on the LPGA, we call it the kiss of death, where if you birdie the first hole and you don't back it up either with a birdie in one of the next few holes, or if you miss in seemingly easy par putt in the next couple of holes, you're fucked. Whereas if you make bogey on the first hole, it's like you can just, you take the valve off. You're just like, oh, fuck it. All right, let's just go, as deep as we can and see what happens.
That's fascinating. I love to know that the pros are as mentally fragile.
I would concur with that, actually. Like, it's not ideal, but some of your best rounds are bogeys on the first.
Mm-hmm.
very often, and birdies on the first can turn out poorly. It's
Sometimes
funny. It
triple
happens
on
a lot.
first.
Yeah. Sometimes, it happens a lot. It's funny. Expectations really powerful, I think. And I think when you get rid of your expectations, you play like yourself. Expectations is baggage you don't need. And so when you birdie the first and you're feeling really good, especially the first hell of a major, right? Because people have been preparing for the Masters for 9 months mentally. I used to be hitting balls in January thinking about it. And if you go and bogey a double the first, very first Masters I ever played, I hit it over the back on the first, and someone said that all you'll hear about the whole first week is don't hit it over the back of the first. Don't hit it over the back of the first. Second shot in the Masters, I hit it over the back of the first. Make double, or maybe I made bogey. And then I birdied the second and I was on my way. It's almost a good thing.
I love that. So Christina, I mean, you say 20 years on the LPGA tour. That's an incredible accomplishment in any circumstances. And I mean, this is going to end up in a compliment, but it's going to start like not going to sound like it. You haven't won that many tournaments. And when you win tournaments, you get the multi-year exemptions, and it makes it easier to stay out there for 20 years. So to get 2 decades straight on only a handful of wins is unbelievable. It speaks to your consistency, your tenacity, your grit. I mean, do you pat yourself on the back like, man, I've brawled it out year after year? Like, it's impressive.
I don't really think of it that way. My thing is just, obviously you go out trying to win every event. This year it was trying to make cuts, which I was only successful a handful of times, even this year alone. But I don't know. I'm generally very, very fortunate that I can pretty much stay in the moment so well that, and I like to say that I have a short memory that, fuck, these 20 years have flown by so quickly. That's part of it. Like it's mind boggling to me to think that it's been 9 years or some shit since my last win or whenever it was. I mean, it's remarkable. I don't even think about it in that same way. So for me, my first win was, 19 years ago. It doesn't seem like it was that long ago. And my last missed cut was a couple of months ago. For whatever reason, that almost seems like it's farther back in time to me. So I just try and stay in the moment and just enjoy it. And once that enjoyment goes away, then it's time to hang the boots up. But, you get those moments where, like, for me, like, I had the yips, like just being able to say that. I started crying because I was like, finally, I know what the hell was going on. And I got so excited to be able to say I had the yips, and now I can start a streak of awesome strokes and hopefully some made putts afterwards that, it's just, it's hard to kind of put into words. But at my last tournament, I actually had a lady come up to me. She was following me around, and she didn't shut up all day. And she only talked when I was hitting for the entire 2 rounds, which, bless her heart. It's, you deal with that as it is anyway on tour. And she came up to me after that. She's like, oh my God, like, I've been a fan of yours for so long, this, that, whatever. I get that a lot. And I think that's really, really nice. And, everyone's like, I love you. And I'm like, it's because you say that because you don't know me, honey, and she was like, it's just so crazy to think, that, I finally get to meet you after all these years. And I was like, I know you meant that in the nicest way possible. I'm in a very fragile mind space as it is right now. So I'm going to do my best to not be insulted by that. But I'm pretty highly offended at this point. I'm offended by everything that you do, lady.
Now I'm very nervous to ask any question, Alan.
Stop. I'm in a much better headspace. Come on. I'm over the yips.
May I ask you this? Because I read this in the paper today. The partner says to the partner, why are you always roller skating? And the answer was, because you never see anybody roller skating who's in a bad mood. And it made me think about golf. Like, I'll have moments of frustration, as we all do, but generally very happy to be on a golf course. So, Christina, as you dealt with the mental health issues, what role did golf and being on golf courses play in improving your mental health?
So when I was at the period of time where I was my worst with my mental health, it was simultaneously golf was simultaneously a refuge as well as the source of my pain. I was still, I was in my mid to early 20s. I was still associating my self-worth with my score. I've always had a very good sense of self, but there's always going to be a part of you that, when you're younger, at least you think, I was always a caretaker. I was always one that would I could read someone's body language. And I'd be like, hey, are you okay? What's going on? Let's talk about it. And so I never knew that there were other people that could do that for me. And no one, truth be told, no one ever did that for me except for my boyfriend, Duncan. Everyone always came to me with their problems and I would help with the problem solving. I would be an ear to listen to, but no one ever asked me how I was doing. And so I was never able to express that I wasn't doing well. And so because of that perception that people had of me, I shut down doubly so. And that, as a result, just ended up festering inside of me. And having that persona of Christina's always bubbly, Christina's always having fun, this, that, whatever. It's just I'm still having fun, but I'm fucking dying inside. And no one is asking me. And I don't know how to ask for help because I'm always the one giving it. So at times it was both my refuge as well as a source of my pain. Nowadays, I'm here at the Pebble Beach Invitational right now. I got a call Wednesday at 11:57 in the morning back in Florida saying, hey, we need you. Someone had to pull out. There's an 8:33 tee time here in California. I was an hour and a half away from my house. And thankfully, just because I've been on tour for so long, I'm always in a perpetual state of semi-packed. I always say it's like my prepper's version of a bug bag, a bug out bag. And so I was like, okay, let me see if I can get a flight that, one, leaves late enough that I can catch it, but two, arrives early enough that I can make my 8:33 tee time. And lo and behold, I was able to find a flight that took off at 5:30 in the afternoon, landed just before 11 p.m. The bags were delayed by over an hour in SFO and then had to go from SFO and make my way down to Monterey. Long story short, I got into the room at 2:45 and teed it up at 8:30. And I'm having the time of my life. How can you not when you're here at Pebble Beach and, playing, I'm playing Spyglass tomorrow. It's just because I'm in a place where I can cope with myself and I can understand things better and I have a grasp of, really who I am to this point in my life. It's fucking amazing. And golf has been much more of a savior, even in those times where I'm well, okay, I yipped it again from 8 feet. And that is my 6th yip today from inside of 10 feet. But it's God damn it, I'm hitting inside of 10 feet. I can't even throw anything inside of 10 feet. Regardless if I'm already inside of 10 feet from the object. So it's one of those things where it's just an unbelievable, incredible battle of, I would say it's so analogous to life, but it's, I'm going to over dramatize it, but it's the good versus evil and the yin and the yang and the dark and the light. And golf is just such a beautiful example of that. If you're going through it, which your girl was.
Jeff, I'm wondering how much you relate to that because listeners to this podcast know I'm sure they think of you as an easygoing, low key, mellow dude, but I know on the golf course you could run hot and you were almost a perfectionist in some ways. Did you burn yourself out a little bit just by being so hard on yourself?
Yeah, I think. It's hard not to though, like Christina says. Early in your career, it takes a long time to it's very rare the golfer who doesn't attach their self-worth or their happiness level to their scores. When you're playing well, you're all happy and you're up and about, and you play bad for a few weeks, all of a sudden you think you're a bad person, It's a pretty frustrating job. But as Christina said, it's the best teacher as well. It's the best psychologist. Golf as a sport is the best psychologist I've ever talked to, because the whole game is a battle against yourself. Really, it's, we have other opponents out there that you guys like to write about, but it's really a battle against yourself. And and everyone's always in sort of a different phase of their battle, and it's always you're going around in circles. At one point you get it, you work it out, and then you get further away from it, and then you find it again, and then you get further away from it, and you find it again. And that's the cycle. And I guess the more you can go through that with a little bit of awareness, gradually, mentally, I just got less affected later on. I definitely got burnt out because I didn't try too hard. I don't think you can try too hard. I think I took it too hard, took it too seriously. I think at some point you sort of come to the point where I would try to play sincere golf, not serious golf, so all in, but it doesn't really matter, and when you're playing your best, it's like that. It's a little bit cavalier and it's very free and it's a lot of fun, and better for your mental health. Because if you're taking it too seriously, you've got some pretty miserable nights in hotel rooms, and you do that 2 or 3 weeks in a row, you don't like your job very much. So yeah, it's a great teacher though, golf. If you let it be a teacher, it's a great teacher.
Well, and I'm sure winning the U.S. Open at a pretty young age complicated that, because that only raised the internal bar, right?
Yeah, the expectations go nuts, and then everyone asks. No one ever used to ask. If there's one bad thing about winning a big tournament like that, or winning big tournaments, is that you can't play golf tournaments anonymously anymore, And I kind of miss playing golf tournaments anonymously. I kind of get to do it now because no one really notices me anymore. But just turning up, play your golf tournament, go through your stuff, play, put your scores in and go. Once you win a big tournament, everyone's asking you how you're playing all the time and why aren't you playing any good? And I thought you were a bit better than that. I had my money on you this week, Jeff, and all that sort of stuff. It just wears you out a little bit if you let it. So I think it happens to everybody. How many times you see guys win a major or golfers win a major and they have a great little 6 months because they're in form, but then for a couple of years they drop off because it's different. I don't know. It's hard. I'd like to think that I handled it okay, but it's tough. It is a tough sort of period. Expectation is a big enemy, I think, and it's hard to get past that because the better you play, the higher your expectations are. But then you go bogey the first, as we were talking about before, all of a sudden your head comes off because you thought you were going to win by 6. You know what I mean? Whereas if you went in with no expectations, you bogey the first, you don't really care. And ultimately, the bogey on the first doesn't make any difference. How many people win tournaments with a bogey on the first? Probably every second week. So anyway, yeah, it's a fascinating journey mentally, a professional golfer. I think you'd get interesting answers from everyone who'd been doing it for a long time.
Michael, I see you leaning forward in your chair. I sense an eagerness here. Jump in. Come on.
Christina, I'm sure you know that Jeff is very much a student of golf course architecture. I've never gotten a chance to hear you on those same subjects. What are some of your favorite courses in the world? Have you had a chance to do any golf course design work yourself?
Well, to answer your last question, no, but it's hard to speak in front of this group because I would say I'm definitely a novice when it does come to golf course architecture, but I do love and appreciate it. It's interesting. I've come to realize that some of my best golf gets played on Seth Rayner design golf courses. There's just something about the way that the courses tend to flow. It fits my mind's eye. But I am a fan of architecture. I'm still very much a novice, and golf course design would be something that I would love to get into. But when it comes to the understanding of soil composition, and then in relation to that, and then location, humidity levels, the way the seasons change, what type of grass types are better suited for that. I would just want to sit there and be like, I want a fescue golf course because fescue is the best grass on the planet, and leave it at that. And, have some, unbelievable, I want to have Redans, Barits, all of that stuff. But I'm very humble in this group, to be honest, when it comes to that. But I've played some unbelievable courses. Mountain Lake is this unbelievable hidden gem just an hour outside of Orlando. It's a Seth Rayner design where it is just such a special, special place. Wilshire, I think, has become a super fun golf course. And one of my favorite courses to go run up to whenever I'm up near the UP in Michigan. Haven't played Crystal Down yet, but I love going and checking out the loop that Tom Doak did over at Forest Dunes. And it's just, I don't know. I'm very, I feel like a 5-year-old girl trying to sit with the adults at the adult table right now when it comes to architecture.
I think you and Jeff actually are very similarly aligned. I mean, I know Christina a little better than the other two folks on this chat. And like, Christina is very old school in how she thinks about the game. She's a purist. There's, despite the colorful wardrobe, I mean, I think you're living in like the 1950s as far as how you think about the game. Like, and Jeff, of course, is old school to the bone. So, setting aside the architecture, but whether it's yardage books or it's lasers or it's pace of play or whatever, like I think you guys actually see it exactly the same, even if you don't know that.
Oh, it's a very highly paid compliment. So thank you, Alan.
No, but it's true.
Christina, do you remember, have you played Merion more than once?
I have only played Merion the one time when Alan and I were on our book tour. I was
Alan, were you in that game?
It was a girls group. It was Allison Shoemaker that Alan had gotten me set up with, and she brought two of her lady friends, and we were playing it in the months prior to Justin Rose winning at Merion. And right. I don't know if I should say this, but I believe I was the only person allowed to hit off of the grass for the 3 months prior to the US Open being held there.
That's what all those divots were doing.
And my memory is that you played from the back tees and shot 69 is what was reported to me at the time, and just fairways and greens and made a couple putts.
Fairways, greens, make a couple putts. That's ultimately what golf comes down to. And Merion, it was so funny. It's the game is played very differently with the men versus the women in many regards. Like I always joke because, like going and playing the Vic Open was honestly one of my favorite experiences because, you're going, I played practice rounds with with Aaron Pike, with Brett Rumford and Jordan Mulaney. So 3 Australian guys. And I was playing and James Morrison walks up and he's like, hey, we're just going to walk if we can watch you guys, this, that, whatever. And I'm like, sure. And I'm like, God, you guys hit the ball so far. And he's like, you hit it so straight. And it's just so funny because it was sort of like game recognizes game. And I just kind of sit there and I'm like, I joke, like, we don't have enough club head speed to make the ball go right or left. I kind of joke in that sense. And I always, and I talk with some of my guy friends as well, that are at various levels of professional golf. And I'm just like, okay, well, tell me, like, is 20 yards a narrow fairway? Most of the time people will say yes. I'm like, okay, well, in 20 yards, you've got how many feet are in a yard? That's 3. How many inches are in a foot? That's 12. So in a 20-yard fairway, you have 60 feet. In a 60-foot fairway, you have 720 inches. If you were to take the diameter of a golf ball and divide that by those 720 inches, you can fit 424.7 golf balls in a 20-yard fairway. So one golf ball is less than 0.25% of a fairway. And the guys get so mad at me because I just have a different sense of perspective. And they're like, yeah, but if you hit it farther, then, there is more potential for deviation, this, that, whatever. Even the wind can cause it to drift, whatever. And I'm like, okay, then use your head and recognize the ball's going to fly that far. So at this velocity of wind, the ball is going to travel this much more in one direction or the other. Like, don't give me that as an excuse, son. Like, you're at your level. You should know, what your angle of attack is, how far to the right you're swinging, and be able to do the math that way. And then they oftentimes get mad and walk away. But there are a couple that are just like, I never thought of it that way. Fairways are less narrow now because it's all a matter of perspective.
That's neat. Christina, do you remember when Annika played in the Colonial tournament?
I was not glued to my television because I was traipsing about in a beat up Dodge van playing in what is now Epson Tour events with my dad on the bag. Uh-huh. But I was aware of it. Yes. And I remember her walking. I just remember her nearly falling down, walking off that first tee box.
Yeah, that was fun. But just what you said, I mean, she picked it apart. She played it like Hogan would have played a U.S. Open course. She absolutely picked it apart, and she missed very few fairways, and she needed to not miss fairways because that rough is penal, and relative strength would have been, stopping balls on greens out of that rough would have been much more challenging for her than, say, Vijay Singh. But just what you said, she played such intelligent golf, and I mean, it's just a pleasure to watch, you or Stacey Lewis or Annika or any of the great players today pick apart golf courses with intelligence. I don't think it's any coincidence that you said Seth Rayner, of all the names you could cite, you'd cite Seth Rayner because he would appreciate the way that you play golf. Jeff, what does it mean when Christina can name any architect and she names Seth Rayner? How did that hit your ears?
Wow, she's picking a good one, isn't she? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, Rayner's fantastic, and he was prolific on the East Coast of the US, wasn't he? I mean, fantastic. Yeah, I don't know. I don't think it matters. I mean, us snobs. I mean, I'm a bit of a snob, but I mean, I've read all the books and I know all the names of all these people and stuff, but I don't think that really matters. If you enjoy playing golf there, you enjoy playing golf there, It's interesting to talk about over a glass of red at dinner or something, Mackenzie versus Rayner or whatever people want to talk about. But there's just sort of, especially that golden age, there's just something about courses that nature that was less messed around with, and they had to use whatever was there, and they were a bit more creative, I think, probably. And the clubs that have recognised that and preserved what Rayner and Ross and McDonald and Mackenzie and the smart ones that preserved what was there, they're enduring. They just never don't. Every new generation that comes along, they appreciate it. It's timeless. So yeah, Rayner's a good pick. It's one of the best.
Christina, Jeff from time to time mentions playing golf with his dad, and you just mentioned your dad caddying for you in Epsom Tour events a long time ago. What was that relationship like?
So
I spent some time with Christina's dad. He is such a character. I want to hear how you answer this. And I may annotate your answer. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, it was one of the most volatile relationships you could imagine in every way, because the highs were so high, the lows were so low. There were just the shouting matches we would have, in the middle of a round, and that's all we knew, or just he's like, it's a 7. And I'm like, it's an 8. He's like, it's a 7. And it's just like, what is wrong with you? It's like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with you? I come from you. So it's clearly your fault, all of that stuff. We would have shouting matches like that, but we would ultimately always end up making up. And it took me a very long time to realize, one, part of the reason why there was so much volatility is because I was screaming into a mirror. I am my father in so many ways. And so coming to that realization now is well, yeah, I am, I can be very strong-headed. I can be, more, stick to my guns and say what I say and believe what I believe with conviction. Although it's, maybe a little bit softer than his general approach is. But it's, my very first major championship was with my dad on my bag when I was 17 years old, playing at Pine Needles in U.S. Women's Open. I was a third low AM that year. We had matching bite golf sandals that we would be going up and down the fairways in. My first professional tournament as a professional was with my dad on the bag. My first LPGA Tour start was with my dad on my bag. My very first win, he was there on my bag. My first Solheim Cup point, my dad was on the bag. And again, because we're I'm so fortunate that I can stay so focused on the moment that a lot of times you don't necessarily think about those things because you're in the event, you're over this shot, you're working on this, you're working on that. And so, it's like there was a lot of screaming, as there always is with, with parents and things like that. And at the end of the day, it's just like, you know what? I love you, but I don't like you very much right now. So a lot of that, whereas now it seems as though the last 10 years, I feel like everything that I say to my dad is thank you. I'm sorry, because I have a lot to make up for. But it was one, obviously I would never trade it for anything else. And just the realization of how special and how rare that was. Being able to look back on that is just, it still gives me, we chuckle about it a lot, and it does give me chills, and it's just something so special. But God damn, if it was not hard at the time, but nothing worth having is. And the sacrifices that you realize, once you're no longer a kid and you can actually look upon, your parents as, beyond just parents, but just as human beings. And you're just like, God, I'm real sorry. Like, you had to endure a lot as a parent, and it's just awesome.
Well, this will interest both of you guys will be interested to know. So when Christina's dad sort of ordained she was going to take up golf as a girl, for a solid month, she had to make 300 driver swings in the backyard. 500?
500. And it wasn't like hold the finish, set back up, swing. It was back and through and back and through. So it was technically 1,000, in that regard.
Without actually a golf ball, just swinging the club. Like,
oh, there was a mat with the little yellow ball hanging on a rope on a hook.
Yeah, but you didn't get to see it fly, which is the best part.
I have no fucking idea why I was doing it. I just did it because I was told to do it. I was a good kid in that regard. I was just like, all right,
I'm still amazed at the determination. Like, I don't think many kids would accept that. It's just, there's no gratification, right? You don't get to see the ball take off down a fairway against the mountains, whatever. You're just like swinging the club over and over. I can't even do that now. Like, that amazes me.
There's a little bit of a gratification by way of spite. I will tell you that.
Jeff, what was your entry into the game? I don't think I know this story. Like, how did you fall in love with it?
I don't know. Dad was always chipping in the backyard, I think. And I just followed him, I think. Like, he got me a little cut-down club, and I went chipping. And we had those little remember the wiffle balls, like the ones with the holes in them, the plastic ones? Used to be able to, we had like an A-frame, but yeah, kind of like a pitched roof, whatever. And it used to be able to hit them onto the roof, and they would bounce back down, and it was like it would return the ball, like almost the original net. So I loved doing that. And then he got me a little half set, I think, at some point, and he just started taking me to the golf course. I don't know. I just always wanted to do it. I mean, we lived right next door to Royal Melbourne. So you'd walk the dog as the family, and I'd be looking for balls because they had like the chain link fence all the way around. But every now and then you'd see a ball that might have been within arm width of the fence, and you could find a ball that was like gold. I don't know. It was just always around. Like, I don't ever remember not doing it, Dad loved it. Mum got into it a bit later on. Yeah, it was just, he didn't sit on the couch if he wasn't mowing the lawn or doing something in the garden. He was chipping or hitting a tennis ball against a garage door or something. So I would just went out with him, and that was it.
Do you remember the first time you beat him?
It wasn't that big a deal, I don't think. He wasn't that he was competitive, but he wasn't competitive with his golf. He just enjoyed us playing, I think. I think he probably, I don't think it wasn't that monumental occasion. Like, it was like benchmarks for myself. Like, when I broke 100, then I broke 90, then I broke 80, then I broke 70, and then your handicap down to scratch and all that sort of stuff. Like, I think those sort of benchmarks were cooler for him. I don't think we even talked about it. When I started hitting it past him, that was pretty fun, though. Because I remember all the way going, as far back as I can remember, it would be 3 shots of mine to get to his. And then I'd get to the 2 shots if I get my second shot past his. And then the next 2 months later, I'm getting my second shot like 20 past his. And then 3 months later, it's like 30 past his. And then gradually you get your first shot up near his. I remember when I started hitting it past him, that was fun. Yeah, good times.
Christina, the players on tour now, there are some they're not half your age, but they're almost half your age.
There's some that are less than half, that are more than half or less than half my age. Yeah.
Well, that's really something, isn't it? Because you're not even 40. You're 38, right?
Yes.
How do they approach you? Are they willing to ask you questions? Are they more likely to watch? How are they different from what you were like as a very young player on tour with your tour elders?
Well, the kids are smarter in a lot of ways. I think they come better equipped. But in the same vein, I think that and these aren't like digs or compliments or anything. These are just strictly observations. Because they're potentially able to be better equipped and they have access to a lot more things, I feel like there's a little bit more onset of knowing everything on the face of the earth at a slightly younger age with more conviction than when I was a kid. But I mean, I was an annoying, in certain ways, sheltered, oblivious, ignorant, blissed out kid living her dream. And I remember my first win. I was walking up the 72nd hole, Kari Webb, who I'd been watching, for a long time, at that point. It was one shot behind me, and we've got this a long par four with water down the entire left-hand side, and where Angela Stanford had her ball plug underneath the lip and almost disappear. Green side. So we had to sit there and wait like an additional 12 minutes while they figured out what the hell was going on. I'm just sitting there just trying to have a chin wag. And Webby looks at me and she's like, hey, don't take this the wrong way, but you've got a one shot lead, right? And I'm like, mm-hmm. And she's like, and you know that I'm trying to beat you, right? I was like, mm-hmm. She's like, and she just kind of walked away. And I was like, I hope you birdie, because I want to make birdie too. It was so much. I feel like it was much more fun and not work in a bad way, but there's just something about, growing up in the 90s and just having that sense of freedom and ignorance, and that lack of technology, I think was something that was just so beautiful. You'd go to the range and then you would find, you'd get a bucket of balls, or I'd help out a little bit at the golf course and they'd give me some privileges to do some extra things or whatever. And you get out there and you get balls and you just whack them. Now I go to a tour event, and if they're Pro Vs that are scuffed, I'm like, well, I'm chipping these guys. I'm not going to hit those with my driver. As a kid, and I'm sure they were just spherical and white, yellow, orange, painted. They'd say practice. They'd say Dunlap. They'd say Strata. Those things didn't matter. So it is definitely different. But there are some of the kids that have no problem asking questions. And I actually have a young girl. She's 26, I should say. She's actually competing at second stage right now. And the other golf course I'm over at Golden Ocala, she's been working there and is got some backing from some of the members and is making her way. And in the last couple of years, the director of golf was like, hey, do you mind going out and playing and letting me know what you think? And I was like, yeah, sure. Fuck it. I like playing golf with people. So went out, and this girl, she's got I think she's got 111 mile an hour club head speed, but fluid. You wouldn't know where the speed comes from. And she was just like, hey, thanks so much for playing. It was so much fun, this, that. And I was like, yeah, dude, no worries. Here's my number. If you ever have any questions about stuff, just ask me. And then she's got no fear asking questions, which I love, because there's so many kids that are just I don't want to bother you, or I'll be like, hey, if you want to bounce some ideas off of me, I got 20 minutes, let's go. And they're just like, are you sure? And I'm like, can you at least pay me the service of respecting the fact that if I say something to you, I genuinely mean it. If I don't want to talk to you, I wouldn't have talked to you already. I'm happy to offer this. I'm letting you know, don't, with me, what you see is what you get. If I say I've got 20 minutes, boom, let's see what we can do in 20 minutes. And then we'll probably end up going over, but that's okay too. But she's just my little rock star. And I'm just like super, super excited to see how her career kind of goes from here on out. And, just, it's nice to see kids that ask questions. And then like last week we worked on like tee position based off of wind and how the wind can change to, it could be 2 hours difference between where you're, what side of the tee box you're teeing off from. And just seeing that like click in her brain was like so gratifying to me. And it's one of those things where I'm just like, people don't ask questions anymore. Everybody knows everything. And I know nothing because I just want to learn everything that I can. So to see someone that's like, hey, something, can you help me? And I'm just like, you think I know something? Oh my goodness. Okay. Well, like, let's fucking go.
Does this golfer have a name, Christina?
Her name is Destiny Lawson. She is a Class A PGA member because she went to Ferris State through their PGM program. And so, yeah, she's Class A.
Her name's badass. Destiny? Really?
Destiny. Her name is Destiny.
All right. Well,
we call her D-Law.
Yeah, it's not to sound like a bunch of old farts here, but it is amazing because I have college kids reach out to me on Twitter, say, oh, I want to be a sports writer. Can I pick your brain for some advice? And of course, I always say yes. I was like, call me on Tuesday at 2:00. Here's my number. And they won't call. I'm flabbergasted because like when I was up and coming, if I had a chance to talk to a Michael Bamberger, like I was living for it. Like I'd plan my week around it. And this has happened so often. I'm realizing this is like some sort of weird generational thing. Like I don't know if it's I can't define what it is, but I know of what you speak. Like there seems to be this barrier, maybe because everyone lives their life on their phone now, that the human interaction is too much. I don't know, but I've been stood up so many times by college kids, and maybe it's just my personality. I don't know, but it just seems like that curiosity is dissipated as a thing. And so I'm happy to hear that you're finding people to mentor because it's not always easy.
I'm sorry to be laughing, but what college kid calls on the phone though, Alan?
Well, because I don't want to text with someone for half an hour. Like if they want career advice,
hop on a Zoom, hop on like a Google Team, a Microsoft Teams thing or something like that. Do voice notes. Kids do voice notes all the time.
Yeah.
Dean Beeman returned my call today. I called Dean Beeman and he called me back and he left me his phone number.
Yeah, well, he's 85. That shit happens. But
Christina, who's the biggest legend in golf that you have played with? Male or female or otherwise?
It would be for me either Lorena Ochoa. I'm very biased as well. That's part of the reason. Like she's just straight up sticking out in my mind, or Sari Pak. The kind of impact that the two of them have had, like, because with Sari Pak, like her the way that she was able to change the face of golf for, like, people talk about Tiger Woods, and there's no question about that. But the impact that Sari Pak had on golf in Asia, I think is you can't even compare the two. It is just unbelievable. I think it's got to be Sari. It's got to be Sari for me personally. I caddied for John Daly a couple of months ago in a random sort of situation thing, and he's a legend in a completely different sense. But I would have to say it's got to be Sari Pak. Lorena is a very close second, but I think that there is a fair bit of bias in that initial response.
Well, and Sari had a queenly presence. I mean, she was like regal. There was something about her, the way she carried herself. Obviously, the way she played the game was so beautiful. But
she's still in Korea. She will go out in big glasses, scarf around her neck, and and a big ass hat, and people will be like, I know those thighs, and chase her around Korea. It is unbelievable.
All-time thighs.
I was going to ask Jeff about it. Jeff, do you remember Sari Pak when she first came on the scene? Not so much the madness about it, but the quality of that golf swing. I don't know that women's got, and there was Mickey Wright, who was in class by herself. But Jeff, do you remember looking at her swing when she first came on the scene?
Yeah, I remember. Yeah, because that was kind of just before Kari was coming out, and Kari sort of made Australians pay attention to the LPGA again. I think she was a proper legend. So I remember watching a little bit and loving her action. Yeah. Can't say I could picture it right now, but I remember being impressed with her game. I mean, her and Annika and Kari just elevated the level, I feel like, to me. I mean, I hadn't been watching enough before. That's probably a ridiculous thing to say, but they played such a high level of golf there that it got me watching, to be honest.
Yeah, I would say Kari and Sari Pack really came out of that same, but it was so round and so beautiful. And Ernie very similarly, and Michelle Wee as a teen, literally at 13, was the same.
Yeah,
just
she
so
was
round
amazing.
and so beautiful and so rhythmic. It was what a spectacular swing, and what an exciting time for women's golf. And as you say, Christina grew the game incredibly. I mean, and look at the LPGA today. It really. Well, when Justin Rose and Jordan Spieth and all these formerly young, but now, let's say 30-ish golfers talk about Tiger Woods, but that Sari Pack influence is every bit as significant on the LPGA to this day.
Yeah. No, she was special. And thinking about Kari, I mean, I think Kari's one of the greatest athletes I've ever seen in golf. Because it was actually in Australia. I went down there to cover the LPGA event, and she wound up, let's see if I can get this, my verb. She was bowling. Is that right? When you're playing cricket, she's the bowler.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, she had velocity, and she was like dancing out there, and it was like an eye opener. Like it was all the golfers were playing, and she was at a completely different level, just the way she moved, and it was like, okay, now I kind of get it. Like, this is not just she has a nice swing, like she's a supreme athlete, and that was a moment of clarity for me.
Christina, when you think of women's majors, how many are there in your mind?
I would say
Let the record show this is by far the longest pause we've had from Christina on any clip.
I mean,
trying not to get in trouble.
I'm trying to think if I want to round up to 4.
Wow. That's such a good answer.
I mean, if we were talking 5 years ago, then or even 3 years ago, the answer would have been 4.
Okay.
And now you feel like the dinosaur's been diminished?
I'm very sad that we have left Palm Springs and that we have left a golf course that was designed specifically for us and our major championship. And I'm sad that we're no longer going to have a leap into Poppy's Pond. And I am sad that we're going to Texas, and the announcement was made, when they were talking about wanting to do abortion bans and things like that, like, funny stuff. And I was sad that there was a group of the membership over at Mission Hills that was happy to see us go and didn't want us back there anyway for the last few years. And I'm, and above all else, like Chevron have done, I will admit, freely admit, they've done an unbelievable job with the tournament. And I've seen it go from, from the Craft Nabisco to just, the Craft Nabisco to just the Craft. And then from the Craft, it was the A&A Inspiration. And then now it's, the Chevron. So I've seen different iterations of this tournament by way of sponsors. And it was a dinosaur and Craft Nabisco as well. But the fact that it's unknown. I don't know the golf course that we're going to in Texas. I don't know what my thoughts are of playing in Texas at that time of year. I don't know what types of traditions they're going to but they are going to create for us. And, the legacy of what Amy Alcott did by jumping into Poppy's gunky ass pond that year for that very first time is it embodies so much of the spirit of the game. And the fact that we've left that is difficult. So I only say rounding up to 4 because I don't know what it's going to be like in Texas. But I love that, what the RNA has done with, with the AIG Women's Open, and, the US Women's Open is, that was always cream of the crop for me. That was always the biggest dream of my life. And KPMG with the Women's PGA Championship have really stepped up, and they are knocking on the door for most incredible major in the women's game for me right now. But I do, it's a nice battle to be able to witness and partake in. But truth be told, nothing will ever top the US Women's Open for me. And it's just nice, just knowing that, the Women's Open, has only, it's only been a major for what, 20 some years, 21 years, something like that. So, there's, yeah. And then we got Evian.
Yeah, indeed. We don't want
because the other tournaments didn't pay for their major role.
Ooh, spicy, but correct. Well, that might be like the mic drop we need here to end this podcast. Jeff used a term a little bit earlier about a different player, but proper legend. I think in your own way, CK, like you've been a huge force out there on the LPGA. Just and it's awesome to hear your thoughts on so many different things. We finally got this done. It was a little scheduling challenge, so thank you. But I should mention that Christina's using my daughter's laptop, my microphone. I went to Best Buy to get the little doohickey to connect them,
which I didn't find until like a couple minutes before we came on, and I was like, "Alan, what the fuck?" Because when we did our podcast, there was always something happening. There was always some sort of a glitch somewhere, something. He'd always show up 4 minutes late, like this, that. Like you've made some big strides, Alan. I'm proud of you, and I've missed you.
Yeah, I know. Me too. I'm so happy you're back here on these airwaves. Boys, before we let Christina go, any parting thoughts?
Well, it's so golf nerdy, I'm afraid to bring it up. But Christina, Jeff hit a wooden driver today, and I'm curious if you ever have done that in your life.
Absolutely. I loved Persimmons. I actually have a special edition Niblick back at the house. Her name is Josephine because she is beautiful, but she's a complete cunt. And my boyfriend Duncan has a full set of Hickory sticks. I've got a replica Gutty ball. I like to kind of joke and say, because I actually started playing golf. It was like in 95. Towards the end of 95. And so we had, like the original TaylorMade burner, which was the metal head, and so but my dad, we do have a few Persimmons and wooden golf clubs back at the house. And I have played with a few, and I am still in complete awe over the golf clubs that they used back in the day, if nothing more, because the grips are so, these grips I'm using are, 80, 90 years old. So for me, they're just basically made out of Crisco, but just the weight of, they've been able to use their hands back in those days with those unbelievable golf clubs it's pretty badass.
Jeff, what was the experience like for you today with a wooden club?
Oh, it's always fun. It was fun. I mean, it goes sideways when you miss it, which is a problem. You got to tee it up a lot lower too. Like that head is small.
Well, you got to tee it up lower, and you have to almost have a negative angle of attack. Like it's the way that we all used to play. No one ever swung up on the driver back in the day with those, those small metal heads.
Yeah, it's true. It's definitely different, but you adjust. It's good fun. Like it is great fun. I mean, I would advise anybody who really loves golf to like find one on eBay or something and just do it once a month or something. It's great fun. It's just a different. It's like driving a manual transmission car, right? It's just you're just a bit more involved or something. There's just something nice about it. Putting with a bullseye, every now and then. It's just good. It's fun.
That's great. I love it. Well, so Christina, you now have to leave the conversation. It's like high school. You leave the room, and then we're going to talk about you. So,
Oh, okay. Well, if I can say thank you guys.
We end these podcasts. I'm not picking on you. This is a tradition now.
Thank you very much for having had me on.
Thank you.
It was
Christina.
great to hang out with you guys, and I will. I'll see y'all later. I guess.
We'll see you later. Oh, we're glad the Yips are in your past.
Well, that was fun. She's just unique, man. I've always loved Christina.
How did that come about that you wrote a book with her, Alan?
It goes back to she was in 2002 and 2003. I was in the offices in Sports Illustrated working as an editor, as you'll recall, Michael. And that was when Christina kind of burst onto the scene. And I was just so fascinated by her, but never. And her interviews were a riot, and I never really got a chance to be around her. So when I went back on the beat in 2004, I said, I want to write about Christina Kim. It was like top of my list. And we just really hit it off. You know, she grew up about 60 miles from where I did here in Northern California, and she was very much a California kid. And her dad was crazy, and they were still traveling in this big, huge, beaten up van, and she was just so unique even back then, the crazy outfits. And so then we just always stayed in touch. And, you know, fast forward almost 10 years, and she'd had a very eclectic career. And I was looking for kind of a book project, but something that was going to be somewhat contained, you know, and so we just basically a diary of her season. It's in her voice. I was just a ghostwriter, but we had a lot of meals and we spent a lot of time on the phone, and it was a great pleasure. And she's obviously, Christina's not afraid to tell it like it is. So it's a very honest book about her own struggles, about life on tour, about, you know, all the clicks in the LPGA and everything in between. So we've always been, you know, friends, and we've always been close.
Neat.
Nice. I'll have to read it.
Yeah. Well, I'll bring you one, Jeff, when I come down to the Sandfeld Classic. So
all right, there we go.
Pack a suitcase full of books. All right, we better let Jeff go. He's not only did he drink like 2 glasses of red wine during this podcast, but he's got a little tournament golf to play tomorrow. So,
all right, we'll be ready. Get the woods out.
Yeah, exactly.
You guys have Balata balls for that?
No, we're using modern balls. I don't think the old ones. I've got some Balatas, some old like 384 200s and stuff, and they just don't. I think they must have had a use by date or something. Balatas, don't you think? I mean, does anybody have like, because they definitely don't go how they used to go. I mean, they went great, nowhere near like modern balls, but I mean, Jack and Greg and Tom and Sevian, they used to hit them miles, right? I mean, they used to go 300 when they nailed one. Yeah, different. But yeah, modern balls. No, it's great fun. It's different.
Well, that's like, I'm sure there is some decomposition. I saw this funny thing on social media where it was like this highbrow salt that said mined from the, you know, the great salt flats of Ethiopia or whatever. It's 250 million years ago it was created. And it's like sell by July 23 because it's not the salt that it's the plastic packaging. So, you know, I think you're onto something there, Jeff. But.
Well, well done by you for getting Christina to join us. That was terrific. And I never really focused on the length of her career, but you know, for 20 years of keeping your card, and I'm going to guess making more money than she spent for 20 straight years. That, as Jeff would attest, not easy to do. And then you throw in the yips and mental struggles and just life on the road, and it's hard. And I give her a tremendous amount of credit for doing what she's done.
Yeah, absolutely. 20 years is a long time.
20 years is a long time. Still full of life, you know, and yeah, she brings the energy to everything. I mean, you know, I've never seen her not be that bubbly. And so would
she be a future Solheim Cup captain, Alan?
That's a great question. I mean, she's had a nice career. The politics of those things, Jeff knows better than anybody else. You know, he's wearing the international hat right now. So from the President's Cup. So she would be in the running. I mean, I think she would be galvanizing. I think she'd be great fun. And, you know, it's a performative aspect to being the captain. You know, there's a lot of media. You got to get people excited. I mean, she'd be incredible at that. So I would support it. But who knows how these decisions get made?
Yeah. Well, thanks for bringing her on. Yeah,
you got it. All right. Well, this was another Nita Fourth. We will be doing these every week for perpetuity if we can schedule them. So Jeff's like, "Go get me out of here. Where's the leave button?"
Jeff, are you playing with Fred tomorrow?
With Fred, yeah.
Are you and he partners?
Me and Fred are partners against Xander and Dean Wilson, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, just in case anyone listening is not clear, this is Jeff's in Oceanside for the Wishbone Brawl annual charity fundraiser for junior golf, and you get these great players playing with Persimmon at Goat Hill, which is only less than 5,000 yards, but quite a fun little test. No gallery ropes. It's one of the really cool events in all of golf, and so we'll be cheering for Jeff and Fred for sure. All right, we're going to wrap up this podcast.
See you guys.
For Jeff Ogilvie, Michael Bamberger, I'm Alan Shipnack. This was Nita Forth, and we'll do it again soon.
Oh my God, there's a dangerous group here.